what are my odds of living? And I really thought he would say like 80-20 or 70-30, and I was saying maybe 90-10. And he was silent about 3 to 5 seconds, and he goes, "You're right at 50-50 right now." But one of the great blessings that day was I sent the kids a note. I sent you a note, Chef. I said to people that, "What do you want to ask me? What do you want?" Jeff wants in my computer. And I sent Jack a note. Jack, do you remember what I actually said? I just said, "Jack, I think maybe you should come and see me."
Oh.
And
Yeah,
the
that struck me hard.
next morning, Jack shows up. They tell me he can't get in, which that really got me. But about 3 minutes later, after they said, the guy said, "They don't make exceptions to this, but I'm going to go talk to my supervisor." Jack walked in the door. Well, that was one of the great blessings, just to see somebody I knew. And in our time together that day, although Jack's got a weak stomach, I'll say that.
How did I evidence that?
Well, we don't talk about it right now. Anyway.
By the way, Luke, I told him. Luke said he called me just as I was getting there. He said, "Uncle Jack, don't take no for an answer." So.
Whoa. Look.
Wow. Well, what happened was
Oh.
you sent out a message. It's funny because things that I had forgotten about come back to me when they're triggered by a little memory of something. And so the night before that, Dad, you sent out a message saying something to the effect of it would really be beneficial just to get to see Jack. And there was something significant that you had said that was alarming and disturbing to me. And so I got on the phone with Jack and told him, "Dad would really like to see you." And I completely had forgotten about the requirement of the one visitor. And so I told Jack, and Jack got in the car and started driving here. And when I realized about the one visitor, I got on the phone and called Jack because I thought maybe he was going to wait till the next day. But he told me, he said at that very moment, I think he was driving through rain, and he said, "I'm about 30 minutes from Knoxville." And so I was like, well, I'm not even going to bother telling him right now. But at some point I told him, I said, "I'm really sorry, but I hope this doesn't affect anything." But they only allow one visitor. But I'm afraid that if I had thought of that while Jack was still in Winston, that I would have told him there's a chance they might not let you in and Jack might not have come. But thankfully I forgot about it. And then I told him just, of course, there was no other answer at that point. Don't let them tell you, don't take anything else. And I was so incredibly relieved when he texted me and said, "I'm with your dad."
Oh. Wow.
And so
That was truly a blessing. And I knew I couldn't see anybody else. I go, well, we could have shot for something after that because they had made one exception. The next big day, I think there were a lot of little things you don't know, but the next big thing was the day they came in and had a real negative talk. And sent up palliative care, and nobody ever said die, but they said you'll experience carbon dioxide poisoning, and we'll help you through all of that. And they're basically saying the stages to death. I mean, they were describing the stages to death. Well, I got all that within an hour period of time. When that doctor left that room that day, it literally didn't take 30 minutes for me to be back on the positive note. And I wrote Chris. I'd written you all a note, then I wrote Christine a note, this doctor friend, and I said, "Chris, I got really bad news today." Everybody's heard this about 5 times. and Chris wrote me back, and I ended it by saying, "That does not mean I'm giving up because I believe in a God of miracles." And Chris's exact words were, "Kent, don't you give up because I believe in miracles too." And then next line, she spaces down like 2 lines. She says, "Kent, you are supposed to come off of the vent." Whatever it was. And she says, "That was miracle number 1.
Hey.
Well, I was encouraged at that point, and I was back on the half full glass, Jeff. If I die, I die, but if I live, I live.
Well, when was it right in there when you told the therapist that they ought to go take care of somebody else because you just got really bad news that morning?
I don't remember.
Well, Priscilla said that morning the therapist came in and you said, "They just told me really bad news. Maybe you should go spend your time with somebody else."
The physical therapist.
And the physical therapist.
He said no.
And
she said no. He said,
She said, "No, I'm not. You're not giving up. We're keeping. We're gonna
Well,
keep."
everybody knows that when I asked the doctor, he's leaving the room after giving me the bad news. And I said, so you're saying without a miracle, everybody's heard this? He said, that's right, without a miracle, since there's time in the window. Everybody's heard this too, probably too, but I asked him, I said, should I continue my physical therapy? He goes, and he did 2 or 3 things like that in those 5 minutes. Like, give up. Well, it didn't take me long to go, I ain't giving up. When when I'll rise in heaven, I'll give up on earth. Until then, I'm not giving up. But what happened in there that was a really big thing was the palliative care woman was in talking to her stuff. And as she says, is there anything I can do for you right now? And I said, well, help me understand this. They said I'm going to die. And if I'm that sick, why can't my kids dress up and mask up and come in here and say something to me? She says, well, let me go check right now. I mean, I think she was going to put it back for me. She goes out the door. I hadn't noticed the day before they flipped the sign on my red sign on the door. I was off the day before. Anybody could have come in the day before. So she comes back in the room
She
about
pulled
5
all the
minutes.
strings.
What was it?
He said, "Oh, I pulled all the strings for you."
Yeah. She comes back in the room. She says, "Kids, you went off COVID regulations yesterday. Any 2 people that want to come see you, anybody can come see you." Well, then I sent a message out. Luke's the first one to open the door. That was a really big time. And then Matthew comes in, and I've shared this, that as far as I remember, everybody's heard this too, but the very first words, Matthew was standing right there on this side of me, and the very first words he said that I remember were, isn't it just like God to bring us to a place where we have nowhere else to look, to reach out for help except Him. I don't remember, just kind of, those are the basic words. That's become our slogan for this thing, isn't it just like God? Then the next day, all the boys were there.
Priscilla came that night after
Priscilla
Matt
came.
was.
That was another great blessing. And then the other 2 boys come the next day. Were all 4 of you boys in there at one time? When you prayed, Luke?
We were all 4 in there at one time. Yeah.
And by the way, if you don't know this yet, Luke did one of those calling out to God, kind of a prophetic prayer that called out for God giving me 25 years old. So I got to figure out what to do till I'm 91. That was another big
Thanks,
one.
Luke.
Yeah.
Then
He'll be as grumpy as our dad was by the time he's 91. He'll be taking care
Way
of it.
meaner.
Come in here, Luke. I need my diaper changed.
now Luke's gonna be the only one I call out for. But you're the one that gave me these 91 years. Get in there now. Oh. Then one of
Prophet, come on in here and change my diaper.
Prophet Luke. One of the greatest, the biggest moments though, was when I sent out that little message to everybody in the family saying, I have really fantastic news today. Wow. That doctor came in that room with a different look 2 days later. I told her it was 24, it's 48 hours later. And he comes in, and literally one of the first things he starts talking about after he says, something big happened to you last night. It's really big. You've had a big improvement. And he immediately started talking about my pathway home. You don't think that's big? Last thing he said to you is you're going to die physically in 10 different ways, except he never used the word die. So I sent that message out to him. I said, now, this is what they thought my good news might have been. That's what Priscilla said, and a couple of you have told me, that the good news might have been that as he told me, we will try to get you well enough. That first day he said, we'll try to get you well enough to go home. I told him, he says, I said, is there no way to get me well enough where I could just go home, see my wife, hold her hand, and lay there, if it's 2 days or 2 weeks, whatever it takes, with my children around me, and die that way. So he tells me in that conversation, we'll try to get you that well. And so when I told him I had fantastic news, some of them were thinking, well, here's the fantastic news. But the fantastic news was he completely changed his story. Wow. And everybody that walked in my room heard that story probably more than once. But the miracle of God in my life. Pray to Jesus went out to probably 50 different people over a period of 2 or 3 weeks. So that was a really, really, really big day. Then Matt and I would sit there late at night. I can't believe what we did during those evenings. I finally sent him home and said, "I'm doing great, Matt." But we would sit there at night, watch the oxygen meter, and when it would get so high, we would just laugh and go, "Whoa, oh, 93!" And then we'd go, 94! And it was just like praising God. I mean, literally, I would sit there half the time just looking up at it, and when it would jump up a little, if nobody's in the room, I'd just go, "Whoa, this is so wonderful." And then, after that first doctor came in, the hospitalist doctors started coming in I'm telling you, 5, 6, 7 days in a row, every single morning. So we're surprised again. We cannot. In fact, the 5th morning in, he walks in and he goes, "We're doing another CAT scan because we want to know why you're doing so good." And that ended up in a great little word of Christ to a young Jewish Catholic girl who had no faith, she said. So those things all just were. And like I said to Jack earlier, I have no idea why some people die with COVID, and some people, their families are back home praying. They're making contracts with God, these bargains, and God, if you say my dad this, or you say my mama or my child this, and they lose their parent.
Well,
Jack was just at a thing at school where a man had lost his brother, and Jack wasn't going to mention me to it because he knew it would be pain. And somebody else brought it up in his hearing and asked, "How's your brother doing?" So, and all the people, guys, think of all the people everywhere they're praying.
well, you know, Dr. Kerr said that one of the biggest things that all the doctors said one of the biggest things you had going for you was your optimism all the way through. But Dr. Kerr in the last couple of days said one of the biggest things you had going for you was your family being there so much with you. And Dad, it changed right at the most pivotal moment that it could have, when they changed that and let people come in. Because I feel like it would have been rough you going through that whole thing with your nose without first of all Josh and Gabe being there with you so much, and then Matt and I were able to come and be with you after Josh and Gabe were not able to be there. But going through that whole nose thing after everything you've been through, I kept on thinking, how much longer is Dad going to be able to hold out hope? And because I kept on feeling like, imagining you like somebody that was treading water, holding rocks on your shoulders for days on end, and it's like going, I can't sleep and get rest. I can't get enough oxygen. How long? I mean, were there not times when you were saying to yourself, I just can't do this
Well,
anymore?
I think what I said. I had that period where it finally hit me. One day I'll stop struggling with this breathing. One day I'm going to say I can't do that anymore. I'll just let that last breath out and go, I ain't going to even suck it in again. I really thought that. But I didn't think I'm going to do it. I thought I'll eventually get there because it was pretty weary. I mean, I was psychologically troubled. You know, you go 32 days and don't hardly sleep. You're awake all night long. Even when you fall asleep, they're in there every 3 hours, and sometimes they're back to back. You doze back off, and here 30 minutes later somebody walks in. But those first 10 or 11 days, I didn't hardly sleep at all. And the clock, who was talking about the clock moving? Luke. The clock, literally, the second hand was virtually on. It was, my brain was in a state, Ben, I'm telling you, it was in a state where that second hand, I could watch it, and it was doing this thing. And I'm going, this is crazy. The second hand ain't even moving. Another big moment, Warren, was when I guess you called Luke and you were encouraging him to tell me not to give up. That you thought maybe when I got that bad news, that was really encouraging that you called Luke and said, tell your dad not to give up.
That's the only thing I was afraid of.
Back to the
Giving up.
nose stuff.
Giving up.
I just want to go on record as saying I'm really glad I wasn't there.
Well, Josh told me after it was over, I said, Josh, were you looking or watching? He said, no, I had my eyes closed. And
Well-
Gabe turned toward the window the whole time.
Let me tell you, so I feel like about 2 or 3 weeks, I was constantly living my life bracing for the worst possible news every time the phone rang. And so right in the middle of that stretch, there's a lot of going back and forth. and the phone rings when I'm on my way down to the hospital, and I was going to stop and get off at the strip and get some Gatorade or something. I can't remember what I was going to the strip for, but Josh called, and when I answered the phone, and he just said my name. He said Luke, and my heart just stopped within me because I was like, I knew he was calling me to tell me that my mind invented it. It's instantaneously as soon as I heard him say my name, that a blood vessel had broken open and they couldn't stop the bleeding and that dad had died. And so, but that's exactly what his voice sounded like I was bracing for him to tell me the worst possible news, but he was just telling me, he was calling to tell me how horrifying the experience was of dad having to have those balloons shoved up his nose.
Oh, man.
But I've determined the reason why dad got those balloons shoved up his nose was for that stunt that he pulled with having Matt act like he didn't know my name a couple nights before. When I came in the door, Matt sitting beside the bed. Matt sitting beside the bed holding his hand. That's like,
I look at Luke and look away immediately.
who is that? And Matt says, it's Luke, and Dad's like, I don't remember Luke.
So finally, I made up a story for Luke when he was a little kid. I did for the different kids, different stories. But his main character was a guy called Bronco Manny, which was a praying mantis that thought he was the high sheriff with this big badge, and he had cap guns, and he rode a turtle that he thought was a beautiful stallion. And it was all, Jeff, about the grace story of who you are in Christ, even when Luke was 4 years older. So I finally whispered to Matt, and I go, I think it's Bronco Manny.
Well, the whole time, because that
Wait,
was
so
right
is
after.
that when you knew it was a joke?
Well, no, because I never got ahead of it the whole time because I honestly thought that his sedative from his embolizations hadn't worn off. And so I just thought, well, they didn't tell me he was going to still be out of his mind. And so, but I just...
You were looking at me funny.
Well, because I thought that you were still under the influence of that general anesthesia.
See, Jeff, I can't help it.
I had nothing.
At some point,
you said
it ought to be over the line. It ought to be considered to be...
But I didn't go too far. I just went a little bit. I think it's Bronco Manny.
That had to be fun.
That's good. And wait, now at what point in the timeline was this? Did you pull this plane?
Before the balloon?
This was.
This is. Is this?
Did he come first then?
No.
I'd already seen him. So when did that happen? That was before that then.
This was probably the 27th or 28th.
I mean, is
August.
this still the time that you're thinking the doctor thinking you're going to die?
No,
or is this after that?
This was before that one.
Before that. Okay.
He had started to recover a little bit by this point, but he was having the tremendous issue of them not being able to stop his nose from bleeding,
It was just a drip.
and just a drip that wouldn't quit, and it was bleeding out the front and down his beard so bad, like you've seen in the pictures, but it also was bleeding down his
Through the
throat
beard.
and going down
Did
and
you take the picture that you all sent me? Ooh.
Man, I'm gonna have somebody paint that someday. That's a classic. Whoa. Sick. Have your portrait done.
Probably the biggest thing physiologically. I guess it's okay if I tell everybody a second ivermectin.
Sure.
The day they told me, Luke they'd been trying to get me to. And I'm thinking, well, they're saying I'm not getting worse. Do I want to throw something in the mix that might have a negative impact? But when they told me it was over, I told Luke, let's go. The other thing that happened, as everybody knows, is that I've been saying to the doctors repeatedly, forcefully, each one, so probably Shriver 3 or 4 days in a row, Luke, explain to me why I have these things in my nose. And when they pulled them out, guys, they were either the size of this finger or that one. And that woman standing there, she's shaking her hand, pulling that thing out. It comes out as one piece. Okay? So you know that being that long, it had to be up into my sinuses. So they pull out.
Yeah.
So I'm 90, probably 8 or more % blocked. And they got this little tube with so much pressure blowing out that when the woman that's taking them out says, here, put this in your mouth so that you can breathe. It blows my mouth open. And I have to then open my mouth and go, but when she puts it in and I close it, it literally, so they've got that thing set on 80-70, I think,
Yeah.
which was the highest thing goes 100. And so they're blowing that up my nose 90 miles an hour, which is what causes the bleeding, they say. Okay? Because you can't take that pressure. I've been on it for 20-something days at that point. So I'm saying now, every doctor I'd say, help me understand why you're blowing that stuff up my nose 90 miles an hour and my nose is stopped up. So
That's a
the
good
woman
question.
takes those things out. Then that wasn't as painful as when she put 4 levels. They put the stuff back. They stuffed my nose the first time. That was very painful. But then here's what she does to me then. She puts a mask on my face that allows me to breathe through my mouth.
Interesting.
And I get oxygen.
And
And
oxygen in your lungs. That's interesting.
I'll wake up the next morning after, what was it then, like 28, 30 days of this. And I'll wake up from one of these short stints, and the first thing I notice is I can go, first day in 30 days I can breathe.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so I talked to that very woman today. Jeff took me about that very thing, and she seemed troubled by it. She says, "I
Wow.
don't know why."
No
I said,
answers. That's all I
Yeah.
wanted is one
Yeah.
answer on
Well, we
what's
were saying,
going
I
on
wonder
there.
how many people might have died of
No, exactly.
I-
When I woke up thinking about that 3 days ago, I was put out thinking about who did they walk in the room today and say you're not going to live, and they never gave him a chance.
Mm-hmm.
Simply change the mask.
Yeah.
It's not that. Well, the biggest thing is have a policy. I could not get a single doctor to look at my nose.
Where's his oximeter?
What's
He's
gross?
fine. Look at him. Look at his color.
I tell you. Oh, you hope I'm low there.
It's
Look.
93.
I'm shaky, guys, and hoping that disappeared. 94.
Yeah.
Flicks it off. I don't need that.
You're
Maybe doctors just don't, that's below their pay grade.
Well, I think the guys that come out
Thinking-
and look at you,
thinking is below their pay grade.
Looking at the
Don't
nose.
wanna-
I am a
Nobody
robot.
Nobody
I
actually
follow the
makes any
protocol.
adjustments in the moment. The way they have the doctors do rotations and they come in and they make adjustments for the future. Nobody comes in and actually does anything. They're like, well, this is what happened before and this is what we've been told to do now. Nobody's actually doctoring the people, saying, oh, there's oxygen getting blown up a nose that's stopped up. Maybe we should put the mask on so the oxygen can get in their lungs. But all they do is come in and follow their protocol. Whatever's on the piece of paper.
and the most common phrase I heard those first 15 days, really, were we don't know what to do. We don't know what to do. COVID is new, and we don't know what to do. And
I don't.
give these people
Hey,
a tamale.
As
You
much
guys couldn't eat your food.
as much as they don't know what to do, I don't understand
why
why
they
they're
don't-
so hardcore on what not to do.
Yeah, why are they so hardcore?
Yeah.
And why will they not even look up your nose? When I tried to tell them, if you just take your flashlight and look at my nose, you'll see I'm completely compacted. I mean, it was blood clots down to where I could touch it right here, solid. And I couldn't get anything to go in and
I don't
out.
understand how you're breathing at all.
Well, I guess it was residual that I was picking up and breathing in my mouth that was just flowing out around the canyon.
Oh, yeah.
Enough, because they were blowing at 90 miles.
Yeah.
So I had to be getting it coming out.
Yeah.
Ken, we're going to give you another 30 seconds on the nose, and then you can't mention it.
Well, okay. Jack's in the room. He asked earlier, and that's when I had like 3 sneezes, Jack, and those big clots came out the first. They were, and then I went, and a big one came up, and then if you've got a weak stomach, this stuff drips down your nut. It drips down your throat, and it forms what looks like perfect little blood veins. So you start pulling them out, and here they come up your throat.
30 seconds is
They're
over.
about that
Stop.
long, and you pull that thing up.
Take this oxygen away.
Tell me. He's not on it
I don't
right
have any oxygen, Doug. I'm not on oxygen except when I'm walking.
You see the danger. The miracle is a two-sided one, two-edged sword.
Oh, and then Jack, and then when they pull out your, what do you call that? The catheter.
Catheter.
When they pull it out, they just give you a 3-second warning, and they go, "Okay, I'm pulling it out." Boom! Oh!
My
So
dad-
Jack is sitting there, and he goes, "I don't want to be in here when they pull it out." And the guy comes in.
Look over, it's like,
Jack is sitting there, and he goes, "Are you ready? I'm gonna pull it out." And Jack's ah!
Did they not mention to you that the next of kin has the decision over how they pull it out? They can either give you some anesthetic or they just pull it straight out. I guess
He pulled it
Jack
straight
must have
out.
said just pull it right on.
So let me tell you a quick family joke. So I got it in my mind. I don't really believe this, so let me preface. But I got it in my mind a couple of years ago that I could actually do a tracheotomy. And so my daughter, who's a nurse, it makes
Who's
her
working on a PhD in
so
nursing.
mad that I will say, I think I could do a tracheotomy. And so so she'll send me she sent me a little cartoon of an animated thing of doing a tracheotomy. Do you think you could do all these steps, Dad? She said. I said, well, I would probably shorten the steps. So
Cut a few out.
on and on this one about the tracheotomy. So I go home from that day when I'm sitting in the room when they do it, and I say, I've got a new thing in my repertoire, Stephanie. I can now do removal of the catheter. I can't put it in, but I can remove it.
Call me if you need me. I'll remove it.
The thing with the catheter is not the pulling out. It's when you look down and see that thing and you go, "They're going to put that in." That's when I'm going, "Oh no!" I ask him, "Is this going to hurt?" He goes, "A little."
you can use your imagination.
Yeah.
Oh, here's another interesting moment. They'd left me
Ugh.
all day long, 24 hours, waiting for a procedure. I didn't eat breakfast, didn't eat lunch, didn't eat dinner. We get to start at 8 o'clock. A new nurse comes in. I said, "Hey, do you think I should just eat my dinner tonight?" And she'd already said, "I don't think." She said, "I think they leave the office at 6." When she comes back later, and she said that about 7. And when she first came, so she comes back later and said, "Do you think I should just eat my dinner?" And this is how she answered that question. "Well, let me answer it this way. There's a UT football game going on right now." And I said, "I'm eating my dinner."
Yeah.
So the next day, Dr. Wagner comes in upset. He interrupts me. He first asks me how I'm doing. I'm saying, "I'm doing really good." He goes, "Well, I'm really put out." And he starts this little spiel that I'm upset because they left you sitting in here all day. I said, he comes in like at 7:30 that day, Luke, and he goes, "I just sat down at the computer and I see they never gave you your procedure." He says, "That makes our hospital look bad." He says, "I already left a message with those guys. Call me ASAP." And then he was going on about how bad it was, and I stopped him. I said, "Hey, wait a moment." I said, "That was disrespectful, inconsiderate, and rude." I said, "But that's just another little bump in my road to recovery." And he stops and he looks at me. He says, "Kent," he says, "your attitude affects me." And this was the most positive doctor I had. He said, "It affects me, all the nurses, and everybody in this circle. That you're always optimistic." Oh, here's what I was going to say, though. I'm going to wait till you get back, Ben.
All right.
You're going to hear this.
Putting on some decaf, people.
That's heard it 7 times, Ben.
I'll be in the bathroom.
I'll talk loud.
I'll talk loud.
I won't remember what I was going to say in 3 minutes. I will. And we'll end that. Oh, Ben, so after waiting all the time, this guy comes in like the middle of the next day. I still haven't had breakfast again. And I'd never seen this doctor on that team once in my life. He walks around the bed. Here, you know the picture with the two tubes coming out my nose?
Oh yeah, we know that.
Okay, so he walks around the
Why don't you
bed.
show us the picture? I'm not sure I've seen
Oh,
it.
you've not seen it. You've seen it. So he walks around the bed. Have you heard this part, Ben?
I don't know.
He walks around the bed, walks up toward me and says, "I'm like Dr. Smith," and grabs the tubes and says, "I'm pulling them out." And he grabs them, and I go, "Hang on," pretty loud. And I said, "Don't do that." And then he gets kind of short with me. I said, "Don't you come in here and do that without telling me what you're going to do." I said, "Last time when your guys did this, I was in pain for a solid hour." I said, "So is what you're going to do going to hurt?"
There's more than
He
that.
says it shouldn't hurt at all. I said, "Well, just don't come in and grab the tubes and say I'm pulling them out." I said, "You tell me what you walk me through your procedure." Well, he kind of lost his attitude. He goes, "Well, this is what I'm going to do," and he pulled them out, and it didn't hardly hurt. He was right, because they were made of a substance that your body rejects and doesn't want to stick to, like Teflon. And what happened is that when he pulled, they were that long.
I've got pictures of the tubes
Oh,
if anybody
yeah.
wants to see the
I
pictures.
think
So
so.
we were done with nose
I
stuff.
don't think I saw the two.
So they they were that long, so they were all the
You've
way.
only
on my
got
side.
25 years to listen to this.
Thanks to Luke.
I'll be talking to Luke. Luke, do you remember the day?
Once a year.
Tell me that story again, Luke. It'll be like Bilbo.
You know, it's gonna exaggerate though. It was that long.
It'll be like Big Fish. I'm a
Big
big fish
Fish.
guy anyway, Jack.
That catheter came out my nose.
Well, what was funny, Ben?
Yeah.
Crazy. Unbelievable.
That's pretty funny. So what was interesting though, when he pulled those big tubes out, the blood just closed back up, or you couldn't even see a hole again. You couldn't even tell he pulled them out. We left them laying there for 2 days. Even the nurses, they finally said, "Do you want to throw these away?" And I said, "Yeah, I don't want to see them again. Throw them away."
A couple of buzzards flew by the window trying to check on the glass. They were like, "Take those tubes away."
All that said tonight is just to say that truly, as Dr. What was the last one? Kerr? He said, "You have virtually experienced a miracle." And a couple of girls, nurses, believed I had truly experienced a miracle. And just to say that I do believe that it is a miracle, an outrageous miracle that I'm sitting here with you guys tonight. Doug,
Yes.
looking over there in your eyes, Doug. It's
Yeah.
just a miracle of God. And I give him great thanks. And I have pretty much for 3 weeks now.
Mm-hmm.